What a cool interface.
I know, right? Welcome, everyone. I know it takes a couple minutes for folks to join, but if you're listening from the recording, I'm glad that you're here listening. Another amazing episode of 99 Dev Problems, which I have just so selfishly enjoyed doing this show, being able to speak to so many different developers and technical people of like all facets of life. And it's just a beautiful opportunity. So, again, an amazing guest that I get to chat with today, who's someone like I've known on the internet for a while, similar to yesterday, but we've never had the chance to actually have a face to face conversation. So, this is just absolutely lovely to get to know you in this way. So, Wes, I would love for you to introduce yourself and yeah, all that you'd like to share there.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Tessa, thanks for doing this. Yeah, I think we connected. I kind of go through like cyclical spurts where I kind of like I'm not on social media for like year, 2 years, and then I get back on. So yeah, I think we connected a few years ago. Yeah, so I'm Wes. I'm a software engineer at Amazon, AWS specifically. Have been in tech professionally for probably, what is that? That's probably 12, 13 years now. Um,
Love that.
most of that has been in startups. This is actually, at AWS, is my first kind of big company experience. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, so there can be a story there we can go into, but yeah, just passionate about learning things. Always curious. Always learning about what's next on the horizon. So I'm super into AI right now. Um, yeah, and then I live in Louisville, Kentucky. So kind of like
Ooh.
a smallish town, and so I like sipping on good whiskeys. There's a lot of old houses here with French influence, so I like working on kind of fixer uppers. Um, but yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That is so cool. Okay, I have so many things I want to like dive into related to like the locality and your like hobbies and things there, but we'll come back around to that stuff more towards the end, I think. Okay, so I would love to hear like the curiosity thing and just learning new things. I think that is just such a general sentiment across like most developers, right? And I think that's a lot of what like fuels us because we have this desire to like learn and build, whatever it is that we're learning about, right? So I'd love to hear about your path, right? So were you interested in technology as a child? Like where did it start to like resonate and become something that you're like, "Hey, I could do this professionally." Did that mean education? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate early on. So this takes us back to, let's see, this is like 95, 96, 97. So all of the free internet, dial-up internet discs were coming out, like with the
Yep.
AOL disc. And um, my it was actually my babysitter. I haven't thought about this in a while. She bought a Packer Bell Windows 95 computer, and
Woo, had one of those too.
oh, nice. Okay, so yeah, people still know what they are.
Yep.
And came with all these little games, and I was just
Mm.
like obsessed with the computer, and I was
Mhm.
like, what is this magical thing? So played on it for hours and hours, and it got to the point where you're using a computer enough, and then you're like, why is this not working? Why is it so slow?
Mhm.
And then just natural curiosity. Uh, what is this defragmentation? What is that? Uh, yeah, defragmenting
Yep.
hard disks. And once I actually saw that, and it kind of clicked. Like, oh, doing that actually, helped me. The game played faster, right? And that was like the first like bulb
Mm, mhm.
moment of like, if I can learn about this computer, I can fix things. I can build things, build little games.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's kind of what started it. Um, and then and then was super fortunate at my high school, super small town in western Kentucky. Um, Shout out Owensboro. And they all
Ooh.
had, they gave us all laptops as freshmen, which 2009, no,
What?
2005 at the time was like unheard of to get laptops.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. I was guessing based on like timelines that were similar. You're a little bit younger than me, it sounds like, based on dates, but like that's crazy to have happen in a small town at that
Yeah.
time. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
they got a federal grant, and every kid got a laptop, and then the school kind of built curriculum around it. So um, freshman
Amazing.
year, it was the A plus computer hardware certification. Um,
Yep.
Sophomore was Visual Basic, Java, and then senior year was like advanced Java, like object oriented. And then my senior year, I actually did a co-op where the mornings I would go to class, and in the afternoons I'd go work at a local startup. Um,
That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, it was pretty wild. Looking back on it now, I was like, that, yeah, super fortunate for that school district. Um,
Oh, that is amazing. Oh, I've like so many. We had computers at that time, right? I mean, like schools had computers, but not laptops, not like personal devices. Like we had the colorful Macs that were like the giant screens
mm,
that looked like the old TVs that were
oh yeah,
that were like super
what are they
deep.
called?
That's what our high school
I
had.
think
Were
we
the
called them the Beetle
I don't know. They're like the
or
iMacs,
something.
kind of. I think
The
the
Beetle. It
what?
was like a translucent,
The
like
Beetle.
yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Yes,
yes,
translucent, super big, looked like the old
yeah.
TVs, the very colorful.
The
Yeah, they're
the
fun.
mice was
Um,
like it was like a circle. Is that right? Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
so weird.
Oh, the good days.
Yep. Yep. Ugh, I know. Like it's weird like how much someone was just it was Catalan actually. He had just
Mm.
posted on Twitter about like his technology and he has a laptop and the edge of his laptop got scuffed and he's like, "Is it bad that I just want to get a new one cuz
oh,
it's like only 2 months
oh, I
old but I
saw
have this
that.
little scuff on it?"
Yes,
And I'm like,
yeah.
I know, and I'm like, "No, that's not bad at all." Because like, I think that we love, like, the technology that we use, right? And I would love nothing more than to have a little computer lab in my house, which is what I'm getting to here with this whole point, is to have, like, a little computer lab in my house of, like, all the
Mm.
different computers that I got to touch throughout my childhood and life. I think it'd be
Oh, that'd
fun,
be
but
super cool.
I'd have to source some old right?
Yeah.
I'd have to source some old hardware to do that, though, because I don't have any of it currently.
Hmm. I have thoughts. I have thoughts about this. That
I
would be
know.
super
Tell
cool.
them.
Now I got to find an old
Tell
Taco
them.
Bell. Be like, okay,
Right?
I need to find one of those.
Did you have the one that Did you have the one that had the button that was, like, wavy, where it was, like it's almost like a little
On the
wave and the
mouse?
power button?
Oh,
That's the
wait,
one
wait.
we
On
had.
the power.
Yeah, like on the power, like to turn on the tower.
No, I didn't have
I'm sure
that
it was
fancy.
similar to what we had, but it wasn't fancy, it was huge. It was like a big giant box, just massive. I love talking about this stuff, like, how did I get into it? What did I do? Like, I remember, I was telling someone about when I taught myself how to code, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, it was, like, after I had my first child," and I was, like, 23, also from a really small town, so shout out to amazing small towns. Um, and I was like, "Yeah, I taught myself how to code," and I started thinking about it, I was like, "No, I didn't." In high school, I was, like, building websites all over the place, like, I was using did you ever use Homestead or, like, GeoCities or Angel Fire, any of those,
GeoCities.
like
Oh, GeoCities.
yeah. Yeah, like the
Mhm.
website builders. I know,
Yeah.
right? And then I started using Front Page and I was like, "Oh, I can like write my own code." And I just forgot about it. It's interesting how we sort of like those memories just kind of disappear and then when you bring them back it's like, "Oh, it's just I don't know, therapeutic to me anyways."
Dreamweaver. Yeah,
Right? Yeah, and
that was the
Dreamweaver.
jam. Oh,
Yep.
yeah, and
Sure.
I mean, like, thinking about the code now, I mean, the WYSIWYGs back then were awful, awful. Like, I can
Horrific.
imagine, like, looking at if I saw the code now and just, like, saw all of the tables to do spacing, and I'm just recalling now just how yeah, because I was like, "Okay, this site I built is pretty cool, it has tables,"
Mhm.
and then mobile, HTML or XHTML was, like,
Yep.
hot in, like, 2004, and, like, none of it worked, on mobile back then. You had to rewrite all of it. Yeah, we've come a long way.
We have come a long way. That's amazing. Okay, so after high school, sounds like you had an amazing opportunity to really be able to dive into technology, both like just in a fun and creative level, right? But like actually practicality, being able to go work with that startup and getting some actual experience. So, did you
Mhm.
go to college? Did you extend that education, or what happened? What happened next?
Yeah. So went to the University of Kentucky, um,
Amazing.
science. Had fun, but I was just a kid, right? I was just like, oh, let's
Mm-hmm.
have fun. Let's do the whole campus thing. Um, the first required credits. I mean, I'll be frank with you. I was just extremely bored and
Yeah, I can relate to that.
didn't didn't take it serious and um, yeah, struggled a bit with like getting myself into gear. Um, but let's see. So it would have been my junior year. You're
Hmm.
required to do like a co-op, some sort of like internship sort of thing as part of engineering. And
Hmm.
I joined this kind of political tech startup. Um,
Mm.
that was interesting. But I was having fun, building there, and then I was like, why should I finish? I'm having so much fun. Uh, and of course, the startup had a huge exit and IPO'd. No, none of that happened. Um,
I was going to say, whoa, amazing.
no, no. But it was still a good experience. And at that point, once I was trying to figure out my next thing, I just had the experience, and then I was able
Yep.
to find a new team um, to help build things.
Yep. That's amazing. I had a similar sentiment when I went to college. I actually like, and I brag about this in a good way, but like I'm a 3 times college dropout. I really tried. I tried multiple
Mm,
times. The first time I went for criminal justice. The next time I went for business management, which I did actually end up doing a bit more in the business management curriculum than I did
mm,
sort of in any of them. And then I tried to go to college to be a software engineer. But by the time that I tried to go to college to be a software engineer, I had already taught myself how to code, like I had referenced from when I was like 23 and had my first kid. And so when I went in there, funny that you said tables, I went in there and did the first class. And they were like, yeah, we're going to build a website with tables. And I'm like, I'm trying to think of what year it was. It was like 2010. I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we building websites with tables? Like, are you serious right now? Yeah, it was nuts. Absolutely nuts.
that's
And
hilarious. Yeah, we're
it
past that.
was.
It's 2010. We're past that.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up getting similar to you. I ended up getting a gig at a massive agency in Minneapolis. And it was a contract gig. And so I was still taking these classes, meanwhile, telling the instructors how outdated the curriculum was. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I just got this huge gig with this like massive agency in Minneapolis, something to put on my resume. Obviously, I can get jobs. I'm not doing this anymore. And then
Mm,
oddly enough, after that contract was up, I ended up getting a job locally at a product company, which was like super rare that that happened. But inside of that product company, in the interview process, he was like asking me about how I would build out a website or how I'd build out the integrations because they integrated their product into a bunch of different types of websites. And I was like, just telling him, explaining to him how I would do it, showed him some code. And he's like, oh, so you don't use tables? I was like, are you serious right now? Are you guys using tables? And so I was just like so passionate about it because I'd just gone through this like curriculum sort of snafu. And anyways, at the end of the interview, he's like, you absolutely have the job. And by the way, I'm so
nice.
impressed by your comments with tables. And I was like, well, like I just why, right? Like why would we be
Yeah.
using old technology? So that's super fun. So very similar path on this side of like just that revelation of like, hey, I'm doing it anyways. And for me, I don't know about you, but I think that why school wasn't so great for me is like, I was bored. But that boredom really plays into, I think, and I'm curious how your experience is I think that boredom had played into like the basics, right? It felt so basic. The first things that they're teaching you, there's like, this is just an extension of what you told me in high school, which also I was super bored with and like
Yeah.
understood everything as soon as it was like told to me. I'm like, I just think I needed a bit more expansiveness, the opportunity to sort of like dig in, right? So I think similar in being a developer, we're like, let's just figure it out. Let's go learn something new, pick up a new technology. Anyways, digressing in that, I don't learn that way. I need to be thrown
Yeah.
into something, given the challenge, and I'm like, yes, I will retain this and walk away with something that I can actually use in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel
No,
like that's
that's
similar for you?
basically yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I think also at the time I was just super young and I couldn't think long term of like, hey, just
Mm,
grit down and go through this boring thing. Um,
yeah.
I like in the moment of like, this is nails on a chalkboard. Uh, I can't do
Yes.
this.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
that's exactly how I felt. Well, you're in good company. Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah. Simpatico.
you've obviously done some, yeah, you've obviously done some awesome stuff, right? And now you're Amazon. And so in the pre-show, we were able to have a bit of a conversation about some of the cool stuff that I should say more of how you were able to land yourself at Amazon. So I would love to hear about maybe some of those like earlier roles and some of the things that you were doing and what maybe brought you joy, what you loved doing, didn't love doing. And then I'd like to get to that path of like how did you dive in and get yourself a role over at Amazon? So
Yeah. So, had been on small teams, had worked on some really cool stuff on those small teams. One of them was actually a men's fashion, like suit and tuxedo rental, but had a very
interesting.
big engineering presence and like
Oh,
we
cool.
everything custom microservice, our own microservices, customer service app, warehouse app. And then we moved on to a like AI fit algorithm, um,
Hmm. That's
where
cool.
how do if you don't have any physical brick and mortar stores, um, if it's just all online, how do you physically fit someone into like a tuxedo or a suit?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
and this was 2015, 2016. So
Hmm.
neural networks had just come out as like white papers. Um, so this was brand new, and we were like, okay, how do we fix this problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, we first had like a proof of concept of like a mobile app. And so the
Sure.
mobile app, you would have a credit card as like a reference object, and it would take a picture of yourself in your underwear, and then it measure distance and create those. So some privacy concerns with that.
Yep.
Um,
That's what I'm
yep,
giggling
just
about.
like yep, exactly. So then the thought was, okay, what if we just had like basic proportional type questions, and then train the model
Mm.
on all of our previous successful measurements.
Yep.
Um, and then so got it down to it's 12 distinct measurements that's needed. So it's like things like
Oh,
neck
wow.
size, chest size, sleeve, outseam, pant length, all of that. And
Mm.
we were able to predict that by just asking your height, weight, age, shoe size, and then like a build type. And with those kind of five
What?
basic questions, it would then predict what all of your measurements were.
Ooh, that's cool. I mean, that's pretty
Um,
early to be doing technology like that. Like, at least I'm guessing it was a lot more difficult than it would be today, because now today we've got all these different types of tools and offerings that do a lot of that.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. So this was like 2016, and let's see. So Keras, like early versions of Keras had come out. TensorFlow
Mm,
2 hadn't come out yet, I don't think, if I'm recalling. So this was kind of, still kind of classical machine learning.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, so that is not about Amazon, but
Very
that was just
cool.
kind of like a really cool early role. Um,
No, that is cool. Well, that's what I want to hear about. I wanted to hear about some of those roles and like what you're able to do, and then like how that led you into Amazon. Because I don't want to drop the spoiler, but you did some work to get yourself to Amazon. So I think it's a beautiful story to let other developers hear it, right? Of like if that's the path that they're looking for, I think it's helpful to like hear your path of how you got there.
yeah, so I mean that whole kind of stint of just doing startups, it never even entered my mind to do big tech. Um,
Hmm. Same for me, by the
I
way.
Okay, yeah. So I just never, I went through the data structures and algos class in college, and I did okay. Um, and I was just kind of like always, it was like a mythical thing, the data structures,
Mm.
algos, um, and actually, what forced me, the forcing function for it, was COVID.
Oh.
Getting laid off from COVID, and
Oof.
just kind of that job search that that spring and summer of 2020, was pretty rough. My partner, she was still employed, but it was just heavily like reduced staff, and that
Hmm.
was a stressful environment for her. And
Totally.
I was on the job search. Um, you know, people I
Horrible
think were
timing for
unsure.
that.
Yeah, horrible timing. I think companies were just not sure how they were going to budget. Um,
Mhm.
I was still just looking at startups, and I think
Yep.
just the small money specifically, they just weren't sure. Um, so then my strategy, so this would have been late summer 2020. My strategy was like, okay, let's just prepare for big tech. Let's go
Mm.
through the upfront prep work. And in my head, I was like, there's no way I'm going to get an offer. But if I kind of structure it as like, shoot for the stars, land on the moon, then maybe all of that additional prep, maybe I can then do like a C or a D series startup or something like that, like a larger
Mm.
startup.
Mhm.
Uh, and that was basically my goal. And then I had to come up, I came up with a whole strategy of using 100 days of code, the hashtag 100 days of code, by the way, which
Oh,
I don't know if it's
amazing.
still popular, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to use 100 days of code to do my entire curriculum.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's incredible.
and started with mock interviews and used that basically as a gauge to be like, okay,
Mm.
what are all of the lessons that I need to really focus on? And obviously, it was uncomfortable. I hadn't prepped. Really bad performance. But it allowed me to see like, okay, this is where let's get back at just big O notation. Let's go back and
Mm.
review this. And then I came up with a lesson plan through
Mm.
100 Days of Code. I think my repo is still up. So I have a log for 100 Days of Code where it kind of shows
Amazing.
um, my full strategy. And so, doing the videos, doing coding questions, a combination of leak code. I think it's 16 programming patterns, cracking the coding interview, and some other things. And then every 2 weeks, I would use interviewing.io, not a plug, not getting paid, um, uh, to then basically check check my progress.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll have to share it I'll have to share it afterwards, but I compiled like a Jupyter notebook of the logs, and it shows kind of how many hours I spent. I think it was like 150, 160 hours, how many
Wow.
days, all of the tooling, the different websites I used. Um, and then actually what it is interesting, the most unique thing that I learned from the data was uh, I put a sentiment score each day on how I felt
Mm.
about the prep. Did I feel like it was productive? Was I lazy and didn't get much done that day?
Mm.
Or did I purposefully give myself a day off?
Yeah.
And over a third of the days were in the red, as in I was lazy that day and didn't like what I got done. Um,
Interesting.
mm, so I think when people are like either building in public or doing 100 days of code, I really try and tell people now from that experience of like, forgive yourself on those bad days. You will have a lot of them, and it's okay. It's
Mhm.
just all about getting back up. Because I
Do you know
got
what's
so self-critical on those bad days, and it took me a while to actually be like, it's fine. Tomorrow's another day. You know.
mm, that is so beautiful, honestly, because I can very much relate to that. I started my business like a year and a half ago, got laid off. And I feel like I've had more bad days than good days. And it has over the long term really, really gotten me down, like I have been over, I would say, I feel like I'm out of it now the last month or so, but before that, it was the most depressed I've ever been in my entire life. Like just absolutely
Mm.
unhappy. Yeah, it was really hard. Just coming out of it, so I'm thankful for this ability to sort of see the light. But you're so right about the journaling thing, right? I know, thank goodness. Actually, literally, thank God. The journaling thing, I think that is really, really awesome because if I would have done something like that, I think I could have had a fresher mind the next day, right? But it felt like I'd have a bad day, then I'd have another bad day, then I'd have another bad day. And it just compiled. And so I didn't have the opportunity to just be like, it's going to be okay, you know? And I think that journaling does that for us. And I used to journal a ton and just haven't done it in a long time. And so that idea of going back and seeing and being like, hey, I had a lot of bad days, but like, look at what I accomplished at the end of
Yeah.
all of that. Like you spoiler, right? But you got the job. And so it's like, it just makes it all worth it, you know? So how did the interviews go? Like, tell me the rest of it. Like after you got through this sort of learning process. And also, by the way, for anyone listening, I'll make sure that I get the GitHub repository from you and I'll put it in the podcast show notes so that it's out there for
Yes.
the actual podcast version.
Yeah. Happy to share the Git repo with the log and then the Jupyter notebook with the graphs.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of a nerdy thing. I look back on it now, it's like, wow, like
So cool.
slicing and dicing a log on 100 Days of Code. Yeah. Yeah. So pro tip, definitely get referrals if you're trying to get into big tech. Doing cold applies will not work. Heavily recommend referrals. So I was able to get referrals for Google, Facebook at the time, Amazon, and a few other companies.
It's amazing.
Yeah, referrals all the way. Don't try and rely on resumes. And
I agree.
yeah, Google's was tough. Google's was really tough on a lot of dynamic programming questions. I got a bunch of leak code hearts. Good learning experience. Facebook, for whatever reason, I just nerves and blanked on the technical screen. So that was good to see. Yeah, good signal just to keep going. And for Amazon, I really, the person who referred me really kind of drilled into me how underrated Amazon's behavioral questions or behavioral interviews are.
Ooh, that is so helpful.
Do not sleep on behavioral questions. If you ace all of the coding questions and you don't have good narratives on your experience, you will not get an offer, period. Full stop. So there's a huge cultural bar for Amazon. And I think that because of that prep and because of my startup experience, A, having my startup experience, and B, kind of converting that, finding ways that those experience relate to Amazon's leadership principles. I think that was a big part of the offer. Yeah.
That is so helpful to have that. So I've never worked at Amazon, but I had a friend at Snap that I was working with who had worked at Amazon, and she had shared a couple. She had shared a couple different things, and I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but it's like basically the sentiment is sort of like argue it out and then just decide, right? It's like just have the conversation and then make a decision. I don't remember how they worded it, but it was something that I felt was like really, really powerful because in our team specifically, people were not willing to have that hard conversation. They were just tiptoe around things. And it's like, no, we have to like disagree and commit. That's what it was, I think. I'm like, we have to disagree on things and have this conversation to get to where we should be and then commit to the end results, right? And so something she brought in. And so anyways, long story short, she had shared a few other type of tendencies from Amazon. And I just thought that was not a lot of companies have that. And I'm not necessarily saying it's like, that's the way that you should go. But I do think that when you have some of those things, it makes difficult situations easier to approach and allow everyone to just be like, hey, we're all on the same page. We have to have these hard conversations to get forward, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, our discussions that we have as a team and in our technical design reviews, I mean, they can get heated. People, will have convictions over,
Good.
um, based on the data that they have, what they think the best path is.
Yep.
And I think another benefit of that is you said there in the beginning of you make a decision. So if at the end of the meeting
Yeah.
there isn't a clear path, or there isn't any clear actions, that was a bad meeting. You just wasted an hour of every
Mm.
time, right? Uh,
Yep.
so yeah, super
Yep.
critical. Um, but and we can talk about kind of Amazon culture too. Um, but yeah, having a sense.
Well, how did the interviews go? Sorry,
Yeah,
I
no,
didn't mean
that's
to
okay.
interrupt you.
Uh,
If you want to share them. I think you were sort of on the path of, like, talking about how you were able to speak
uh,
to, their cultural
yeah,
needs, right? And then, how that played out. If there's anything else you wanted to share, I think it's helpful context, like, just sort of understanding how the company dynamics work in that process.
yeah. I can talk a little bit about that. I don't want to. Um, yeah, I'll talk about kind of some of the culture things, and
Share
yeah,
what you want to share.
because I also interview candidates too. So I'm just trying to, like, in my head of like, okay, what's in the prep package? What's in the
Mm.
prep package versus how do we evaluate? Um,
Yeah, the secret sauce
uh,
versus what's public.
So one of the things that I see that's I think could be really helpful for folks if they're considering it, and honestly, just not just Amazon, but just anywhere, uh, is knowing
Mhm.
knowing that you're nervous. It's totally okay that you're nervous, and
Mm.
allowing yourself time to digest a question. So, like, let's say I gave you a
Mm.
question like, "Tell me about a time where you failed to collaborate with a peer." So I just inserted a hook into there,
That's a
right?
hard one.
Exactly. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so it's totally okay to be like, oh, that's an interesting question. Let me think about that for a moment. And just take a deep breath,
Mhm.
right? Hey, I need a
Yes.
moment to digest that question you just gave me. That's totally okay. Um, and then to give yourself even more time to come up with an answer, then you could say, okay, so let me read that back to you just to make sure I understand. You're wanting to know um, a time where I did something that I should not have done, or some conflict arose, and I probably learned something from that. So, what was the lesson? Is that kind of what you're asking? Right. And just validating and kind of sussing out what the underlying
Mhm.
signal that they're asking for is huge.
Yes.
Right. Um, and
That's a great tip.
yeah, highly recommend. Just take your time, take a deep breath, and just, it's a great active listening skill that you're able to tell the person back what they said in your own understanding.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Plus there's a bit of clarity with that too, right? Like, I think sometimes, when interview questions come up, right, they're written the way that they're written when they're very well done, right? To really sort of get you to think about the situation and try to draw out either positives or negatives for something that you've been through, right? But how you've gotten past that. And I think that's key, because sometimes it's like when you hear the question directly, it isn't necessarily, you don't hear it in the same way that they're stating it, if that makes sense. And so the ability of being able to process it and be like, okay, yes, this is the end objective you're looking for. So to speak to that, I actually had an interview through when an interview process back in February. I was like the only job I was entertaining. I made it all the way to the CEO and talked to the CEO and just completely botched the interview, completely botched it. But he asked like a very vague question of like, gosh, I can't even remember how it was worded. Oh, I wish I could, but it was something about like, tell me about your career path, both like what you would celebrate and something related to sort of maybe what you learned. And I can't remember again the exact words. Completely
mm,
threw me off. Totally threw me off. I botched the interview, just did a horrible job. And that isn't a difficult question, right? But it was so much context in one question that I just felt like I just started rambling and then got very self conscious and just couldn't come back from
mm,
it. And So I think there's definitely something here. I say this with a very humble brag. I'm thankful that this is something that I can do, but I usually don't suck at interviews
Mhm.
because I'm so transparent that I'm like, I'm going to tell you exactly who I am, how I operate, and I have nothing to fear, nothing that I won't share, and just really just kind of come in with that mentality. And so it was actually really, I mean, uncommon for me, but it was
Yeah.
so helpful to like rethink about it and be like, oh, I know exactly how that went wrong, right? It's just and thinking so anyways, coming back to the point here is like really thinking through what is it that they want to know instead of let me just talk you through all this stuff that maybe you don't want to
Yeah.
know.
No, I mean, yeah, I think you explain it better than I can. Getting that underlying signal.
I don't know, it's pretty
No,
rambly.
uh, getting that underlying signal, and also part of the prep too was that I was told was you know not necessarily bend um, your own values, but if you study the company that you're interviewing for, like what are their value system, what are their principles, and taking like an actual like 30
Mhm.
minutes to actually like read and reread each one, and then think about how it relates to your own values and your own experience.
Mm,
Because if you just memorize it, you're probably not going to remember, and it's not going to come up.
right.
But if you actually take the time to be like, ownership, what does that mean to me? How have I done that in my
Mm,
career? Do I disagree? Do I not like this principle?
yeah.
Um,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that will you'll remember it, and B, if you bring that up, I don't know if you necessarily want to say I don't like this principle, but if you just more say like I, you know, it I want to challenge this principle because of X, Y, and Z, right? That means the interviewer is
Mhm.
like, oh, this person's actually really been thoughtful about, um, the leadership principles. Um,
Yes.
so
It just also speaks to, like, the fact that you did research, right? Because I think it's often when you come into an interview, and I'm sure it's much different nowadays, right, than it was a couple years ago and even a couple years before that, when it wasn't quite as difficult to maybe find jobs in this market or ecosystem. Is I think it also speaks to like your amount of investment in that. So very similar to what you're saying, but also just proving to them that it's like, no, I'm putting the time in. I'm actually putting the energy in to validate this is a role for me too. And I think there's something super beautiful about what you just said also, because if you're looking through those values and they don't align, maybe it's a role that's not for you, which for me, I have very strong values around what and who I want to work for and where I want to contribute. And so that is something I consistently look at because I'm not going to start speaking to my values now, but I want to work at companies that I know that I'm going to thrive and I know I'm going to enjoy. And so I think that's something that's very underrated probably by most to actually go and do that
yeah,
research.
it's super underrated. I think most people are just looking at DSA, looking at leak code, doing putting the reps in, and it's just like there's more to it, right? You can't just leak your way
Yeah.
to these companies.
hmm Well, I think what's interesting too, and like coming from more of the hiring sense, right, is like I've always had this theory of like if it's something that is like a tactical skill that can be taught with a book or a course or whatever, then I'm less worried about those skills. I mean, of course, we need to have the basic skills to do a job, but I'm always more focused on soft skills, right? Do you fit the company culture? Do you think the way that we need you to think? Are you empathetic? Do you just the different soft skills that go into that role too? So I think that plays a lot into sort of that job description and what that looks like and what that company offers and how you consider interviewing in that way as well because it's just I don't know. I don't actually know where I was going with that. And I feel like I'm just kind of rambling
Just
now, but I think that the soft skills can be really important in that
well,
process.
interviewers can pick up on the soft skills too um, in the leak code question, because
Right.
I've had a lot of people ask me, does Amazon check to see if you know how to use AI, or do you know these AI agents? And
Mm,
I'm not going to presume what leadership knows, but just from my own experience, um, if you can solve a problem that you've never seen before methodically, and you actively take feedback from the
mm,
interviewer, and you talk out loud and communicate where you're currently stuck in the problem. I mean, a lot of these coding questions, you can get tons of soft skills signal um, just from the technical,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What is your take? This is kind of a little bit of like a side tangent, but what is your take on actual like, take home projects or coding projects or I guess the process for technical interviews in general? Do you have a preference?
um, this would be kind of, yeah, my own personal thoughts and speculation here. Um,
For sure.
but
Yeah. Sorry, I should have specified not as a hiring manager, as you as a human and developer
yeah,
employee.
um, I think what the traditional data structures algos um, test what the signal you're looking for is, are they extremely smart and can solve problems a person's never seen before, or are they extremely self-organized, right, and can um, learn the
Mm.
patterns and things like that. Are there tons of extremely intelligent engineers out there that don't do this prep or just haven't looked at data structures? Sure, absolutely. There's tons of amazing folks out there that you could probably get some of that signal out in a take-home test. Um,
Yep.
I I kind of swap back and forth on whether they should be done or not, like cyclically, like every other year. I'm like, these are awful interviews. Why do we do them? And then I swap back to it's like, oh, it's actually a really efficient signal gathering exercise. I've done take home tests. Um, some of them were like, I'll give you the weekend. Some of them were like, you have 4 hours, go. Um, those are hard because just because, let's say, for example, um, you get a take home test and you have to make this CRUD app. Uh, the
Mhm.
interviewer needs to be really good at making sure that the problem space is large enough that you can't just be completed with some tutorials. Um, and
Mhm.
then also with AI, I haven't even looked at what take home tests look like in the AI world now with all this code gen going around. Um, yeah, so I'm thinking about this right now. I'm kind of leaning back towards, leak code questions is still in a really efficient way to kind of figure out, um, can someone solve problems? Um,
Yep.
because AI is going to come and go, the
I kind of
tooling's going to come and go. Why evaluate on the tooling when it's just going to change? If you can, if you're a great problem
Mhm.
solver, you're going to pick up what today's tech stack is, regardless. Um,
Yep.
so, yeah. Yeah, it's a trade-off, and I think more,
Yep.
I'm just kind of leaning towards, yeah, it's an efficient way to see if you can solve problems.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, and like I'm actually just in the interview process, so we'll see what if there any of them come up right in technical interviews or anything. But I am really interested to see how technical interviews will change because what we've mostly seen, and obviously there's some that are far better than others, right? It's like build a thing based on this criteria, and then deliver the thing and whatever it is that they ask you to do, right, with the specs and the differences and such. And it's like today, I mean, you can just go use Cursor or go use any of these tools, right? And just build it out. But it's being able to like speak to the decisions. And a part of me is hoping, and I don't know, right? But speculation here. A part of me is hoping it's more about how did you think about the problem, right? How did you come into it and decide what to build and how you thought about building that and making the decisions because you still have to guide AI, right? And the choices and how it's being built. And don't get me wrong, if you give it a specific prompt that's kind of vague, it'll go crazy and just build everything. But it's interesting to me because we have all these tools at our availability and it's just going to get better and better. And the more people that I talk to that are in, big tech companies like Microsoft or Amazon or whatever, they're really prompt engineering a lot nowadays. And so it's like, how important is the actual process of me writing that code versus the process of me making those technical decisions or those problem solving assumptions based on that criteria. I don't know. It's all sort of interesting because like I'm coming from it of being in DevRel for the last, however many years and really not doing a ton of code. I did do code right with each of the different products and whatever, but it wasn't at the same level. I wasn't building something either from start to finish or contributing to something that was big. And so it's one of those things of like, how do I sort of resharpen those skills and like, what should I actually focus on? Because I'm like, I don't really think that being able to write a line of code is where I'm probably most valuable, right? I'm probably most valuable in thinking about how we're going to go about building whatever it is we're building, the problem or the sort of decisions along the way, and being able to do what humans can do, right? That sentiment, that understanding, that ability to bring in that sort of human judgment. I don't know. I'm curious to hear what you think in that realm, if you have opinions.
The space is moving so fast. It's kind of wild. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you would have asked me a couple months ago, I like to think of it as like, what's the autonomy slider? Like, how much are we giving the vibe coder
Yes.
control versus how much we have in control? And, I'm still at the stage where if I'm quote, vibe coding, I mean, I'm spending 90 minutes just curating the context around the problem space for the agent.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Exactly.
it's almost like waterfalls making a comeback. If you can flesh out, all of the thinking ahead of time and give all of that context to an agent, it's going to do something pretty,
Mm-hmm.
it's excellent code. It follows your operational excellence. If it's all about, it's trying to mimic what you want. So if you're able to provide those great software engineering practices and you have market tested your new feature, you have demand by your users, right? You have a process for security and threat modeling and shifting that process left. You can insert all of that context into the agent to have it write really well written code. Um, it's the when the autonomy slider is all the way to autonomous. You're right. I mean, they're not there yet, and creates
Yeah.
tons of tech debt, which I just heard that name's just been moved over to slop. If you're having it write slop,
Oh,
that's just another way to say tech debt.
nice.
Yeah,
Slop.
yeah.
That reminds me of a pig farm. I don't know why, but it does. Like, we should go back to tech debt. Slop is not
Yeah.
a good term.
We let everyone know. PSA, don't use slop, use tech debt.
Yeah, please, please. As a farmer, please. Oh, that's super fun. Okay, so let's shift a little bit before we wrap up. Actually, we're like really nearing time already. Are you good for a
Yeah,
couple more minutes,
absolutely.
or where's your time at? Okay, cool. So I asked you in the pre-show what your favorite hobby was, and so I'd love to hear about that. But I'd also love to hear about like you live in Kentucky, you're in a smaller town. I can relate. I'm from a very small town, 100 people in my class. Now I'm in Waco, so it's still small. It's a city, but it's still small, and we live out of town. Anyways, I just love to hear about sort of like your local hobbies, what you enjoy doing kind of on the side, and then tell me about the hobby that I asked about because you started telling me and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Let's like save this for the show because I want to hear more." So, tell me about Kentucky life.
Yeah, life is great. In early, I was in Florida, um, and shout out from Enmo, nice. And yeah,
Yeah. You got some good comments in the
yeah, outstanding colleague on my team. And so kind of grew up in Florida, moved to Kentucky, probably middle school, and it was just a very different culture. I the small
Mm,
town life. I like that everyone knew each other. Everyone kind of takes
same.
care of each other. Traffic isn't an
Mhm.
issue. Um, you know, it's great for family life, and I have spent some time, small stint in DC, um,
Mm,
and I've always thought about, oh, it'd be cool to be in a place like Phoenix or maybe even SF. It's always
Mm.
attractive, but I just like the cost of living. I like there's so much to do. Culturally, we're kind of right on like, um, we're kind of Midwest, but also kind of like Southern culture. Plus, Louisville has a lot of like French and German influence. Um, s-
Ooh, that's fun.
yeah, it's got, um, yeah, I one day I could go to another city, who knows? But for right now, I like it. Um, and some of the things that I do uh, is a hobby that I call orienteering, uh, or it's land nav. Some people call it land nav, some people call it orienteering, but it's essentially you have a map and a compass, and you are in the woods, and you have to find the finish line. Um, no phones, no GPS, and you just kind of have to understand like a spatial awareness of like how to get places, how to use, okay, I need to go along this creek to get to this control point. There are things called control
Mm.
points, and then
Mhm.
it's a race, so then you have to think about your other competitors. Are they really good at going up hills? Should I cut through here, try and beat them?
Mm.
um, it's fun, I love it.
Who sets those up? Like, does someone create that as like sort of the like master race creator? This reminds me of like Hunger Games almost, like the game master, you know?
Game
Without
master,
all
I
the
like
killing,
that.
of
I
course.
like that. I'm gonna call the team game
Yeah.
master. Um,
Do
yeah.
it.
So there's a team that volunteers. I should volunteer more, but they will go
Hmm.
out and they will set every control point. They will like plan the
Ooh.
routes. Um, uh, there's an annual night O that takes, I think, a huge amount of effort. Where essentially there's like over
Mm.
150 control points in like a park. It's pitch dark and
Wow.
there's no predefined route. So you have to decide, okay, I only have 2.5 hours. What should be my route to collect as many points as possible? And it's really kind of strategic thinking.
Mm. So it is like a
Yes,
game.
it's very much like a game. Some control points might be on the bank of a river, so that might give you 1 point. Other control points might be in the middle of a huge field, not near anything, and the only kind of
Mm.
layout to the land that gives you some sense of where it's at is like the smallest, I don't know, like erosion gully or some sort of land feature that from a distance it's almost impossible to see.
Mm.
So that might be like 3 or 4 points where you might actually have to use a straight compass azimuth to try and get there. And so you kind of have to strategize.
Mm.
Should I go for all of the 1 pointers and just be really quick? Or do I try and go for some of these 3 pointers, but I could get lost? So
Mm.
it's a whole kind of strategic thinking that I just absolutely love to do. And if anyone's interested, I'm happy to talk about it. And um, yeah, I feel like it keeps your brain sharp, and it keeps you active.
I was just gonna say that, like, I think I would absolutely love doing that. I am very much a nature person, like you were talking about the sort of small town life. Absolutely the life that I desire, and I will never, never, you can quote me on this, unless I'm living in a cardboard box and my children are dying of starvation, I will never live in a city again because I just want that community. But this is beautiful. So this is like something that, tickles all the like problem solving skills and sort of interests that we have like as engineers, but allows us, like you said, to be fit. Like I need something like this in my life that like encourages me to go work out because it is so hard to get to the gym. Because like going to the gym is just so
Yeah.
boring. I'm like, I just show up, I do the same thing or a set of things, right? And it's like this is actually like fun. Are there organizations or sort of like
Yeah.
I don't know, how would someone get
Yeah. So
started in
there's
this?
Orienteering USA. So it's a national.
Mm.
So they'll kind of have like national events throughout the year. Um, and there's also a lot of local clubs. So I imagine there's some here,
Mm.
Dallas Fort Worth um, club, and they probably have a circuit where
Yep.
they'll go around all of the parks in the area. And there's also a really big like international presence. Like it's even bigger in Scandinavia than it is in the U.S. Um,
Yeah. Mm. I
Yeah.
agree with David. Same. I feel like it was one of my super skills that I like felt very natural at navigating things. So much so that my husband was not natural at navigating things. So he was like, "Okay, you direct where we're going." You know, women love to tell men how
Of
to drive.
course.
It's just how we operate,
Yeah.
right?
This comment resonates with
But now that
yeah.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure it does. Now that like we have GPSs, like I totally agree, David. It's like a skill that you sort of like either lose or you just no longer like need. So then you stop utilizing it and your brain stops thinking about it. And I honestly feel like sometimes AI kind of falls into that bucket too of like now that we have AI with some of these things, right? We like allow it to sort of do that heavier cognitive load and then it's like, "Oh, wait a minute, where'd those skills go that I had before?"
That
They disappear when you
that
don't
is
use
such a
them.
good metaphor. Navigation with like vibe coding. Um, wow.
I agree.
So here's something that maybe I think about when I think about navigating, and maybe we can kind of use this as a metaphor for coding. So I loathe GPS navigation, like the actual navigating. I cannot stand it because in my head I'm nerding out of like, okay, how often is it updating by traffic pattern? Um, like I'm like going through all these scenarios, like, is that the exact most efficient route? Um, or like, yes, I know that street. I don't need to know all of this reminders thing. Um, and so my workflow for this, I'm calling it a workflow. Um, if I need to get somewhere, let's say it's a long trip, I'll do what I do with orienteering is I'll look at the route. I won't hit navigate. I'll just see what the route is. And then I'll try and memorize each turn or each exit and be like, okay,
Ooh.
I need to get on 40 north and then get on 65 south, and then take exit 222, right? So 40, 65, 222, right? And then that's my thinking
Mm.
of like, okay, I know the route. I'm good to go. I know how to get there. So I'm still leveraging the technology to get me the route, but I'm still carrying the load of managing, okay, I'm driving. I need to remember XYZ. Um,
Yep.
I'm, you know, uh, coding agents are super powerful, um, but
Mhm.
I'm not gonna hit navigate, right?
Yep.
I will give it context. I will think about the problem space, have a concise idea of what I want solved, give that to the agent, and have it work in steps. Um,
Mhm.
and it's really attractive. I'll just end on it's really attractive to put the autonomy slider all the way over. Uh, I recently had GitHub Copilot assigned to some of my GitHub issues on a personal
Mm.
project, and it just
Interesting.
ran wild uh, with a with a lot of success actually because I gave it very explicit boundaries and guardrails.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
but I don't think we're there yet. I think it's still a valuable exercise to keep your brain sharp, um, to
Yep.
hold the problem space in your head. Um, so
I really like what you just shared because what I got out of that, right, is like you still hold the control. You're still making those final decisions. You're still like able to use the human side of your brain to evaluate situations, right? Is there a car accident that literally just happened? Or is it a time of day and you know that traffic's going to get bad? And then it's like, I know where I need to end eventually, right? But like I think I can veer off and maybe take a different path and find my way back to the highway or something, right? And so that's where your brain is still, like you said, doing that like problem solving and whatever, but you go and you did your research and everything you needed to look at to plan out what you were going to do before you did that. And so you had as much context as possible, where maybe going into it, you have no context, or maybe you're just relying completely on the GPS or the agent,
right.
right? Instead of having that deeper understanding yourself. That's a beautiful metaphor. I like that.
Yeah, I'm going to use that now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. You should. Thank you, David, for bringing that into
Yeah.
the fold. I think that's a beautiful
Yeah.
metaphor.
Shout out David.
This has been so fun. You and I very much think alike. I am the same way. Like when this is kind of ridiculous, and I don't usually tell people this because it makes me sound a little bit crazy, but it feels like you could relate. Is like whenever I'm driving or really sort of doing anything, like my brain is constantly processing every little tiny data point around me. Like, are the birds landing on the road? Is something strange in this person's yard? If it's something I know, all the way to, oh, I see that car. They're like way down there. There's this light's going to turn red. Are they going to try to go through a yellow light? Totally a Texas thing that I learned. Oh my gosh. Nobody stops at red lights. They drive through them and they don't use blinkers. Freaking drives
Oh,
me
I hate it.
crazy. But anyways, I'm like constantly looking all over. See, and that's why I think you and I have a very similar brain of like, we sort of see this, we look ahead, we process everything, and then we've got sort of that like judgment or decision. And then anyone who's sort of outside of that process, you're like, that is not how it operates. You're supposed to stop at this light so I can process all the data
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel seen. I'm always looking at 2 cars ahead. So when
Yeah.
the second car is
Yes.
starting to brake, then I know the car in front of me is starting to brake. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yep. My husband got rear-ended one time and we were talking about it and I was like, I just don't think I'd ever get rear-ended because I'm like, I'm constantly like watching so intently that I feel like I'd be able to pull over. And he was like, Tessa, it happened so fast that I couldn't stop it. And I was like, okay, I got it. I've never been in this situation, right? But I always tell myself that I'm like, it's not going to happen because I'm so perceptive on everything that's going on. But I'm sure it will one day.
Yeah. No, we're just gonna keep on our problem solving, and it's never gonna happen. You didn't just manifest
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Right. Knock on wood. Oh, this has been such a fun conversation. You and I definitely need to like chat more. It was so great getting to know you and being able to do this on the show. I'm really excited that you landed at Amazon. You were able to make that dream come true with all the work that you put into it, which I think is key. So for anyone who is listening, again, I will make sure that I track that repo and those links down that Wes is willing to share with us, and we'll share that with all of you. Wes, where can folks find you if they want to, follow you, read your great content, whatever it is where are you up to? Where are you on the internet?
Yeah. So, best way to find me is on X. I'm kind of restarting, like actually sharing things on X, things I'm learning about
Ooh, yay.
AI. I'm super passionate about health and health data and how that can be used to help you make better decisions. And just odds and end of whether it's Kentucky things or old house fixer upper things. So definitely find me there. Be on the lookout. I'm going to make sure I share the I have some kind of older X posts that talk about behavioral interviews that I think is still super helpful. I'll make sure provide the code repos and then anything to do with AI agents. That's where you can find me.
Amazing. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been lovely. I hope that everyone else has a fabulous rest of their Friday, not day, yay, because that's what Friday is. Yay.
Yay. Happy Friday.